Hey guys, I'm Trevor.
I'm Vincent.
And this is the Anthony and Todd Show. Today we're going to be checking out Kamasi Washington's latest record, Heaven and Earth. Kamasi Washington, jazz saxophonist, pretty well known across the world of jazz and hip-hop and kind of R&B contemporary music.
Yeah.
2015 released The Epic. Not his first album, but that thing was an epic. It had tracks like Clair de Lune. It had his own... Clair de Lune is my favorite moment off of that. But the rest of it is just kind of like his own material. And then last year released a record, The Harmony of Difference.
The EP Harmony of Difference,
Yeah,
which was a very
30 minutes or
very
so.
otherworldly experience, similar to the Epic. And I liked about it because it was just like a condensed version of the Epic.
Yeah.
It was a similar experience to the Epic, but it was a more condensed, more like roady, so like you can listen to it on like a short car ride, and it's like perfect for that type of environment. That's why I really enjoyed it.
Listener friendly,
Yeah.
for sure. But he's back with his epic proportionate record. Heaven and Earth is like 2 hours 30 minutes, give or
Around
take.
a little bit shorter than the Epic, but the same amount of girth to it.
Yeah, it's a girthy project.
This is a double album. Each side's about like an hour and like 15 minutes, and it is completely like grandiose. This is a grand statement from Kamasi Washington. This is almost otherworldly what he's able to produce. This heaven and earth theme that he's kind of coming up with. The first part is more to kind of quote him, because I think his quote explains it the best. The earth side represents the world as I see it outwardly, the world that I'm a part of. The heaven side represents the world as I see it inwardly, the world that is a part of me. And I think that theme comes in a lot of the production. I think the second act is a lot more sad and a lot more almost isolated in a sense.
Yeah.
But it still has the grand, like, even though these are two separate sides, there's slight differences, but I think the slight differences make it more interesting. Like, I think this album, what's really good at is it's really consistent throughout, but it uses like very like just like, oh, let's have a different type of instrument here. Like on the track, Can You Hear Him? There's just this synth solo that comes out of nowhere. This very like almost brash synth comes out of nowhere, and you're like, okay, this is very strange. And then there's just like little moments scattered like that throughout the entire album, just like things that you don't really know what to expect. Like I think Street Fighter Moss, the single that was to this album, which is Kamasi Washington's version of a Street Fighter track. Is one of the moments of that, because you have this steady kind of like bass synth showing up, and it's just an instrument, but the instrument's able to change up the stylistic approach to everything else. That's the only real difference. Minus the bass synth, once you remove that, it's a traditional Kamasi Washington. You have the saxophone, you have the large grand choir, and similar instrumentation, but like these slight differences that he's able to scatter out through the entire album make each track seem unique when there's not that many differences, which I really enjoy, because it's minimalist with working on a grand scale, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. And being a music student, that's kind of how jazz works in and of itself. People that can like differentiate jazz standards are able to because of the specific like hooks or like main chorus lines almost that these different standards offer. But from jazz track to jazz track to jazz track, there's always got to be something different that separates it. And Kamasi is able to use that way to his advantage, because I mean a lot of jazz albums of the jazz age, or back when like jazz was huge all across America and all across the world, some tracks didn't have that and they faded into oblivion. There are some that are very, very well known because of their instrumentation or because of their super catchy hooks. Kamasi is able to take the entirety of the jazz age and condense it into one record. And I think that's just what he does best.
Yeah, he's just such a... I think I mentioned that this album's very otherworldly, and I think Kamasi also fits in that opinion. Like, you just look at his just what he wears and how he presents himself. You look at the music video for Street Fighter Moss. He's wearing this giant, almost character outfit.
Yeah.
He has a cane, and when he doesn't have the cane, he has the big fucking ass saxophone. Like, and he has this bushy beard, this bushy hair. Like, he looks like almost like some weird Street Fighter character. I'm making a petition right now. Kamasi Washington for Street Fighter 7 DLC. That needs to happen.
That track got me thinking. We'll discuss it later.
But
I'll say it at the end.
I think Kamasi Washington's a unique individual, and everything, all of his characteristics that make him such a unique individual, he's able to be really well spoken for. And he just seems like a really unique individual, and that plays out in his music. And there's just so much to love, not only about the music, but Kamasi Washington as a person. Like, you hear some of the stories of him talking when he was in college, how he would tour with Snoop Dogg and, like, crazy things like that. And even, like, the approach to Street Fighter Moss, which is his take, like, the theoretical idea behind it is it's a world where fights are settled not with like war or like actual fights with Street Fighter. You go to the arcade and you show up, you square up in Street Fighter. Like, I think that's just like it. I think that's just like such a clever idea, and it's really personal in the story behind it, how it relates to him, and I think that's how it is introspective. I think it's fantastic, some of the concepts behind these tracks, and I think it's just this otherworldly style is nothing else. Like, I can't stop talking about that because this album makes me feel like I'm almost in space watching the Earth from like an out-of-body experience. Yeah, it's completely surreal. Like, it's honestly like watching Planet Earth. That's one thing I can compare it to. It's just very relaxing, but at the same time you're experiencing so many emotions. I think the Space Traveler's Lullaby is a good example of that. It's grandiose, it's large, it's big, it's beautiful, but it kind of makes you feel like you actually are in space because there's an element of almost overwhelmingness to everything. You're just this small human in this like giant ass area of planets. You're alone drifting through space. Like, that's the type of feel it gives me through the instrumentation, and and Kamasi Washington's solo on that's really isolating, and it gives you that feel of you're lost in space. And I think it's really a really beautiful start to the second half. There's so many ideas, there's so many like narrative themes that you can get from just the song titles and how the music is organized, and I think that's so cool. There's just so many elements to this album that I just want to go over really quick that I think are amazing. I already mentioned the track Can You Hear 'Em with the synth. I think is really sweet, but I'm pretty sure during the second half of the track Kamasi Washington dies, and he just goes fucking all in on playing the saxophone. He sounds like he's dying. Like, he's just going out doing what he loves. He's like fighting with his saxophone. That's his weapon. I think it's crazy. He's just wailing on the thing. It's completely mind-blowing. And then it just like joins back to everything else like so seamlessly. And that's what I appreciate. Like, he has this moment where he's able to outshine everything else, but he's able to so seamlessly transition back to everything. Yeah. Hub tones. What I appreciate about the track is a giant wall of sound that reaches like a moment of intensity where everything kind of condenses down and it gets real harsh, but then it like releases slowly with just the drums, and then a piano shows up, and then it slowly builds back up to the giant wall of sound. I think that's like so cool. It's like you're kind of being condensed and crushed, but then it kind of releases. I think that's just it's so.
Like when you dive too deep in the ocean.
Yeah. Connections is one of my favorite tracks on here, but as well. It's like watching almost like, it gives me an impression of like something you'd seen like Fantasia. It's really beautiful. Yeah. It's like watching like a waterfall and just having your head fill up with like these daydreams as you're just sitting there getting lost kind of in nature. The quiet saxophone playing around 2:30 mark feels like really intimate. Like, Kamasi's like kind of like
soothing you.
He's like kind of, this is like a personal conversation, and then it gets followed up by several styles of instruments playing, which feels like different characters of people in this world that you're inhabiting. And then like the grand choir with string accompaniment, it's just so unreal. It's followed by this great bass, which is, I'm assuming, is Thundercat. I have not.
It has to be Thundercat.
He was on the Epic, so I'm surprised. I wasn't able to look up the personnel for this, so I.
And honestly, like, just hearing him and knowing like Thundercat's style, it sounds very much so like Thundercat.
It's super electric, and it's a tiny bit twangy, which I really enjoy. I don't know if it should work, but it fits perfectly over the keys and drums. Like, I just like the distinctness of the bass on that one track. The Invincible Youth has this like chokehold, everything instrument followed by a more peaceful, soothing instrumentation, which provides this like calm after the storm. Like, almost, since the call is called like the Invincible Youth, I think it's almost like how like everyone in their life goes through all these problems, and eventually there is the quiet after the storm, and there's this rainbow that appears from the clouds. Like that type of imagery I think is really cool, because this, like, at the beginning, this giant, like, cluster of just so many instruments going off that lasts for a good, like, 30 seconds, which I think is really nice, how long they hold it for. Just everything's going off, and it's crazy, and this mess, and it's almost like this war going on, but then everything evens out in the end, which I think is really nice. And just, like, the narrative that track's able to give you. Testify, with very heartfelt vocals from Patrice Quinn. All the vocals on this record, all the vocal features are very distinctive to the individual, and I think throughout. Also, Fist of the Fury at the beginning, which I think is really empowering, and it's like a fight song. But Testify I really enjoy, because Patrice Quinn seems so, like, genuine on it. Like, it feels really heartfelt from her, and it's almost... And, like, it just seems so super personal. It's almost testifying, like, the existence of love, or testifying your love for someone. I think it's so impassionate, and, like, Kamasi making almost this love song is, like, perfect. Like, I think that his music is almost very dreamy, very, like, passionate, so that's why it works for almost like a love track. One of One is a really weird track, because it has this Latin vibe to it. Like, some of the horns and some of the bass and some of the drums just have this Latin flair. It's just really weird that, like, one of the final tracks on the thing is just very different from everything else. And I think it's that Latin flair, so the nice, like, end to the first section going into the Space Traveler's Lullaby. And then Vi Lua Vi Sol, or I saw the moon, I saw the sun in Portuguese, is the translation. Contains these, like, really weird vocoder vocals from keyboardist Brandon Coleman. It reminded me a lot of not Soundwave. I'm trying to remember who it is. It'll come to me in a minute. But just, like, I love vocoded vocals, like, whether it's from, like, Daft Punk, or a lot of jazz artists use it.
Yeah.
Was it Terrence Martin? It may not be Terrence Martin. I may be wrong, but
it's Joywave.
Joywave. I think it's another one of those instances where it's so different from everything else. Like, it's just that's, like, one of the key differences in the track. There's not really anything different from a lot of the other tracks, but that one vocal separates it from the track. You remember that track for the vocals. And then just to close everything off, Street Fighter Moss. I can't say this enough. The steady, like, 8-bit synth is what makes it so special. And it's like, it's a traditional Kamasi track, which is glorious on itself, but just him, like, going out there and trying to make something so different from everything else, but in the same way keeping it in its own. Like, this sounds like a Street Fighter track in a sense. It's just, like, almost like this track doesn't consist in our reality. It consists in Street Fighter's reality, like the actual world of Street Fighter.
See, yeah, that's
like not like what not all like the way I imagine it. If you are in Street Fighter's actual reality, they don't only listen to 8-bit music. They have, like, different types of genres, and this would be a jazz track that would be in Street Fighter.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head when you said, like, the 8-bit synth. I was going to say something, but no, I mean, it's not like you are here playing Street Fighter on an arcade cabinet. It's like you are in Street Fighter's world, and, like, Ryu and Chun-Li and Ken and all them exist, and you can be friends with them, and you might live right next to Blanca.
You might live next to Zangief.
I wish. That'd be cool.
But yeah, I just love this record to death. I think it's another great addition to Kamasi's already stacked discography. Mm-hmm. And I hope he continues up with more smash records. I hope he continues up with little bits of experimentation here and there. Like, I think that's what makes this album so great. It's just the little bits all around that, just him trying out some new different stuff, and just it works. And it's not all to credit Kamasi Washington, because Kamasi Washington's only plays saxophone. He's only the front man. So it's credit to all the musicians that were part of this record.
Yeah.
That I think it's what making it so special. But Kamasi being in charge of everything, I think it's the true.
He's like the orchestrator.
Yeah.
And lead saxophone.
Yeah. But, like, this record's special for not just Kamasi, but for everyone involved. And I think it's an instant classic, and I like it more than the Epic. I think the Epic's grand, but I enjoy this a lot more just for the different variety, and I think I like the themes a lot more than I did on the Epic. Yeah, I think this is a great record, one of my favorites of the year, hands down, and I'm gonna give this a 9. I really enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. I definitely have to agree. Now, like, just kind of a note for any listeners, the reason, like, we don't ding it on length itself, it's 2.5 hours. It's way longer than anything we've listened to. It's way longer than Migos or Flatbush or
me YOLOing for 2 hours and 25 minutes.
Yeah, basically. But, like, the thing is, it's a jazz record, and that's something that you kind of have to take into account. You know, there are...
See, like, that, I don't even think it's that. It's the fact that it's
takes
able
you
to
away.
fill this 2 hours and 25 minutes with content that I want to hear.
Well, see, that's like what I'm trying to say. Like, when you make an album that's like an hour or 2 hours of the same thing, then it's not going to hold up well. Migos Culture 2 is the same thing for an hour and 15 minutes, and so it doesn't hold up. I mean, it's just not... It's blank space. It might as well be white noise. But this is so experimental and so interesting that I don't care if it's 2 hours and 30 minutes. I don't care if it's 4 hours and 30 minutes. I don't care if it's a 24-hour record. Like, if it's going to continue to deliver new content and interesting things to me, then it's going to hold up in that space.
Yeah.
And so dinging it on time here is definitely not something that we can do.
Yeah.
I would have to agree and give this a 9. This is a fantastic record. I love Kamasi Washington, one of like the most wholesome and, in my opinion, inspiring musicians in the realm of music today.
Yeah.
Now, the idea I was going to bring up, if there was like a fighting game with rappers, would you play it?
Why wouldn't I play
Because,
it?
like, I'm just thinking, like...
I would main Doom. That would be my main.
On my way here, I was thinking, like, there's so many, like, distinct personalities in the rap game that you could make, like, so many different, like, unique attacks based on these characters.
Okay, I think Open Mike Eagle, I don't know if he can make it on the roster, but he would definitely be a Sish trophy.
Oh, yeah.
I'm main Doom, though.
I don't know if Doom would make it on the roster.
Doom would make it on the roster.
If there was a double XL like game, I would play that. I would play PNB Rock because his reach would be incredible. His hitbox would be like this wide.
Well, if you enjoy us talking about dumb stuff like would you play a game where a fighting game where rappers were the fighters, and you want to hear us more talk about like dumb shit and memeing up all the time, we host a weekly podcast called The Anthony and Todd Show on Apple Music and Spotify and other streaming services. Links down below in the description. Or if you want to hear more about reviews, we have plenty of reviews on our channel. But until next time, guys, I've been Vincent.
I'm Trevor.
See ya, boyos.
Bye, everybody.